And once again, everybody, so I literally just realized as soon as I got finished recording a different video that the term I was looking for was you spend essentially in the hour long talk talking about capitalism. You end up spending more and more energy balancing the productive forces to suppress it and make it inefficient enough that hopefully you get a new breakthrough. Because, of course, once if you were to let an organization roll up after it has capitalistically served its need, all right, it's produced enough item X or item Y. If you were to let it roll up and collapse on itself, which of course, that would also lend towards, the boom bust cycle where all of a sudden you have a fuckload of light bulbs and a fuckload of milk and a fuckload of cars. And then all of a sudden, that finally that supply runs out eventually, and then all of a sudden you have none and you get the bust, and the fact that there's no actual stability in that. So, in order to try to maintain stability, more and more energy has to go into productively managing the productive capabilities. All right. Intentionally making things less efficient at the organizational level in order to hopefully buy time for research and development, essentially. Because rolling up would cost you all of your skilled and productive, whether it's blue collar, white collar, would cost you all of those people as they move on into other things. If you hold on to those people and you focus them on trying to figure out breakthroughs, then you can, reasonably stretch the process out longer. Okay. But essentially, in the end, it always folds. Part of the reason why capitalism still exists, or at least, the visage of it, the hologram of it still exists in the Western world, and, well, I suppose globally. But the reason why capitalism survived and why it even is sustained outside of the efficiency, I've said this before and I stick to it, that fundamentally modern economics, now, not only is it just a bullshit clown show, because honestly, it is. It is. When you honestly understand the system, it is. Um, but outside of that, essentially the modern economic, the boomer era and post, has been a continuation of the Second World War's war economy. Okay, because you have to understand this. There was no actual justification. There was very little justification to maintain the mechanization. Okay, post World War II, post crushing Berlin, there was absolutely none. You could make the argument, we did centralize all of the factories and production in order to produce the war materials. And it's just like, yes, yes, there is that. But there is not actually a real solid reason that we should have continued the level of mechanization that we've gotten to. All right. Essentially, American life after World War II, we shouldn't have kept the trucks. We shouldn't have kept the cars. We shouldn't have kept the tanks and the planes and all this other shit. For the most part, life should have returned to the pre war normal. All right. But it didn't, because we were able to get more and more oil. All right. And because we needed to create an economy that would function like a flywheel, all right, where it wouldn't just be perpetual boom busts, but we'd have this economy that just you throw more energy into the wheel and you keep it going and keep going and keep it going. All right. Because we wanted to flywheel economics and maintain our stance. All right. When it came to the Russians, when it came to the Soviets. All right. as the only honest to God reason to maintain the mechanization, I suppose, and the collective industry. But the reality is, at the end of the day, mechanization is gonna go away. All right. Now, the issue really comes in as far as who is going to control everything. All right, because there is absolutely a push for the current elite, a new rising elite, and there's all sorts of influence and pressure coming from all directions. All right, different visions for how the world should look, but the reality is we really shouldn't be pissing through as much fuel as we do. All right, because the reality is trying to maintain this gigantic mechanized monster is the exact same reason why you end up with houses that cost a fortune. You end up with everything else because the flywheel has moved to the such a high speed. All right, we have to maintain that speed or grow it. All right, spinning it faster is the faster and faster you spin the flywheel, the more dangerous it becomes if it breaks loose. All right, if it just pulls through the pin, all right, you get enough vibrations and it just goes flying out the building. All right, the devastation would be massive. All right, but mechanization, all right, along with information technology, is a large part of the reason why everything is financialized and why everything fucking sucks. All right, essentially, what we're trapped in, just like with everything else, we're trapped by the convenience that we've come to enjoy. We love the convenience. We love the fact that you could just go to a supermarket and it's mostly full of food still for now. But we love the fact that we could just go to a store and buy shit. All right. Although most of it really is shit now. I don't know if you've seen some of the shit that they produce these days. And it's just like, my God, what awful trash. This is the best you guys can come up with. I know, it's the thing. But still, modern economics is a load of shit. It's a load of shit. When you honestly understand enough about it, it is a load of horse shit. All right. Mechanization, mechanization, pissing through all this energy that we really don't have to. Like, there is no reason that we cannot have an incredibly efficient system if we were to replace capitalism as the standing ethos for the society. We could absolutely achieve levels of efficiency that are fantastic. All right. It's just a fact that we'd have to be very flexible. All right. And we don't exactly, the reason why capitalism works so easily as a system for us is because it integrates the more natural, um I want to say myopic, the self-centeredness of it. All right, it plays very well to the self-interest. What it doesn't do too well, I mean, the self-interest produces all of this abundance for the whole, but there's the side consequence though. All of this abundance is fantastic until we run into the situations like we have now, where it's this constant metering of, oh God, we can't overproduce. And if we overproduce, there go all the jobs and all the logistics chains fall apart. And it's chaos. And we end up in a deflationary death spiral and everything goes to hell. Capitalism is great in short doses. At first, it's really great. But when you start getting into the territory where second, third, fourth order consequences start to play in, when governments get reliant on the tax revenues that it produces, when people become dependent on it, it becomes a problem. Okay. And now we're at the point where so much energy goes to propping up the system by its self destruction that we don't have time for anything else, which is unfortunate. All right. We could still mass produce food. Honestly, when it comes down to it, really all we need to produce is food, lumber, a handful of industries. We just got to keep rolling. All right. Well, the issue is honestly, like when it comes to capitalism's advantages, the market is a fantastic idea. It is a fantastic idea. All right. Whoever's going to pay you the most, if you're growing whatever, if you're a farmer, there's not too many of them left. But if you're growing whatever staple, and in California they're paying 20, I don't know, 20 a bushel. I don't fucking know. I don't know farm pricing. Um, but let's say they're paying 20 a bushel versus, on the East Coast they're paying 15. Obviously, if the fuel cost of, train transport or motor freight is cheap enough, you could scrape an extra dollar or two out of a bushel, which is fantastic. All right. Or ship travel, and count ship in there. The idea of markets is fantastic, but honestly, we have to get to the point where we don't need to piss away all of the energy that we do anymore. Okay. We can have an incredibly efficient system where at most people only really have to work 10 to 20 hours a week. All right. And we'd still have most of what we want. All right. And then as for the rest of the time, well, what would happen to all the breakthroughs in science and medicine and everything else? Well, do it the way the colleges kind of were started. All right. You look at how most of the colleges started, at least the ones that date back a long time. Guilds. You start off, so groups of skilled people come together and they form guilds. And from guilds, eventually you kind of get to colleges. All right. Or tech schools, trade schools. All right. And from there, the schools themselves are, of course, they're not constantly paying, property taxes and all this other shit because you don't have a system so big it demands property taxes. So they exist, and then, people who are interested in a trade or a skill who don't have access to the information or who want to know the secrets of how shit actually gets done and the best way to do shit, and everything that surrounds it, all of the base knowledge, go to the guilds, and in the guilds they learn all this other shit, and then the workers, the people who comprise the guild, eventually figure out how to make a better MRI machine. Okay, you don't need a fucking basketball court, a football stadium, a sauna, like all of this other shit. You don't need all this other shit that colleges have just exploded into. Like they're in everything. All right. There are towns where the college not just employs the majority of people, but the college owns the majority of the town. Okay. And there are people who think that's not a problem. And it's just like, are you fucking kidding me? Do you know how fucking expensive it is to run all of this shit? Especially to break even on it. Or especially when you take into account that most of these colleges aren't doing that good anyway. All right. But we could go back to a guild system. We could still have all of the good shit. All right. We might not be able to mass produce the good shit. All right. At least when it comes to the higher tech, goods. We might not be able to mass produce at the same level, but honestly, if we move past capitalism, we won't need to. We won't need to. The guild in the US sends word to the guild in the UK that sends words to the guild in Germany and France and all these other fucking places. All right? And then all of a sudden every single country figures out, all right, this is how we make a better MRI machine, and they build the better MRI machine. All right? Like, we don't need all of these oppressive systems, all right, that require endlessly growing sums of money to for their own maintenance. We don't need all this shit. We don't. We don't. All right. This is just the consequence of capitalism trying to stay alive in a system. The economic system, the idea of an economic system is separate from sovereign power. All right. They interlink pretty easily, but the economy is just one issue on the plate of a sovereign. All right. It was never supposed to be the overriding thing. All right. Everybody spends so much goddamn time because they have to, because it's invaded every single space possible. Everybody has to think. All right. Even the common dude. The common dude, the common chick, has to think about economics. All right, the economics of the shit. And it's like, oh my god, we're wasting so much time. So much fucking time. Kicking the ball around, debating all of the shit that we could do if the system was actually designed to produce the mass abundance that it was supposed to. All right? We waste all this time, we waste all this energy just crossing over the same fucking territory over and over and over and over and over again. All right? What we honestly need are reasonable people. I know that's a stretch, that's difficult, that might be a non starter. We need reasonable people. We need people to own houses. All right? They need to be able to own a house to raise a family. They got to be able to get food. They got to be able to get clean water. We got to be able to produce water pumps if they have wells. We got to produce some basic shit. Some basic fucking shit. All right? And then beyond that, why the fuck do we have everything else? Why the hell do we need all this other shit? Do we really need a marketing department so Farmer John can battle Farmer Amos or whoever the fuck over whose tomatoes are fucking better? Do we really need this shit? And honestly, I'm kind of at that point where I'm tired of economics even being a fucking thing. All right. Unfortunately, I'm really really good at seeing second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth order consequences. Like I could see how decisions, good or bad, just ripple out over time and the consequences. All right. Can I see the future? Not necessarily. But am I really good at predicting what a move, good or bad again, is going to result in? Oh, I'm fucking bulletproof. I am fucking bulletproof. Maybe not bulletproof, but I'm pretty goddamn close to bulletproof. Honestly, I won't deny the fact that I expected when Russia and Ukraine happened, I expected the Germans to actually freeze to death. I'm not even kidding. I expected the Europeans to freeze to death. All right, and it was a rough year. It was absolutely a rough year. All right, and they're still in a rough spot in terms of energy. All right, but I expected a lot more deaths in Europe. I really did. Not to say that I'd be happier if there were more, but it's a thing. I did not, at that time, I did not necessarily account for the idea that what the sanctions would really do was essentially give the Europeans um, an excuse to buy oil that had been essentially run to India, China, all these other countries, which would then just slap a markup on it and get the Europeans to pay 30% more. I didn't exactly count on a sovereign level scalping campaign, all right, involving multiple countries. I did not expect that. That was something new. That was something special. But the thing is, too, I suppose I'll cap it off here. I'll just call this a part two. But when it comes to the way that things actually work, like, most people, they spend their lives looking at the world through the autism lens, all right, where they just see everything as having to kind of fit in a box and you can't just do things. The reality is, there's a lot of things that you can actually just do, all right? The problem, one of the bigger problems that we have outside of a lot of people being fucking unreasonable as a motherfucker, one of the bigger problems that we have is that you've got people who are convinced that they can't do shit, all right, except, work a job for a living. You've got people who are convinced that they can't do anything else, all right? And they consistently seem to get in the way of the people who know that they can do anything else. All right. Like, there's so many impediments. Like, that people honestly believe that the rules exist. I'm getting really off into the weeds here, but the reality is just like everything else, the same way the corporations operate, rules apply asterisk. All right. Like, I'm not saying that, laws don't obviously apply to certain situations. Obviously, you can't have a Dahmer running around. All right. But the reality is, we're brought up with this idea that the system is all knowing and all powerful and all capable. And the reality is, the fucking sniffle came over the ocean and we had to shut down an economy, given it was absolutely used as cover to bail out the banking system that was going through the repo crisis, and we were already dipping into recession anyway. So it was the perfect smokescreen, the perfect cover to just throw money into everybody's pockets. All right, which is what they'll have to do again. All right, UBI or not, I don't care what they call it. They're going to have to do it again because the system is seizing again. All right. Because you can't, there's no drug in the world that can make the unsustainable sustainable. Okay? All right. There's no solution to the impossible. All right. We have an unsustainable system, and without, essentially, because labor has gotten shit on so heavily, without constant bailouts, the working class in the West is done for. All right, like, done for, done for. Um, but the system is not all knowing. It's not all powerful. It's not all capable. Okay. The same way that, you know, I shouldn't even. Eh. Can I get into that topic? Can I YouTube? Can I? No. No, I can't. God damn it. There's so many things that I do want to talk about, but outside of coded language, there are, of course, many topics that the platform does not want to be talked about. Of course, they'll suppress it, they'll shadow ban it. So, you know, I'm kind of restricted in what I can honestly talk about on here, at least. But yeah, fuck it. We'll end it here. Apologies if this did not turn out exactly how it was supposed to. But this has been Michael from Spades Consulting, of course. If you are interested in personal or business consulting, stop by www.spadesconsulting.com without the dash. If you are interested in written content, check the description box below. And what am I missing? If you like and appreciate the video, like, favorite, sub, share, do all the things. Every like, every sub is a middle finger to the bosses of my past. At least some of them. All right. Some of them deserve it. Trust me. Trust me. All right. And it's another step forward in not just building success for me, Spades, you, everything. All right. It's another step forward in making good things happen. All right. We'll put it that way. And with that, I will see you all next time. Have a good one.